Bro, this is the most bitch-made thing I've ever seen. The situation is more dire. America is like, dude, Vladimir Putin literally came to the United States of America, took his out and said, suck it. And Trump gave him a blowjob, only to turn around and get nothing out of this equation at all beyond glazing Putin. What the? Yeah, my predictions have been wrong. My big predictions have been wrong. I'm not in the predictions game anymore when it comes to Russian affairs. Okay, both parties are unreliable and also insane. So it's, I think, very difficult to speculate. I got the analysis was good, and I got a lot of the broader outlines correct in terms of like where this would head and whatnot. But let's be real, okay? When it comes down to it, if this is a moment where you know, these two guys are the ones making the decisions, it's very difficult to predict.
So for President Trump,
I don't think that's the case, though. I don't think that. I do not think that Donald Trump is going to arrest Vladimir Putin.
To start, we see President Trump and Vladimir Putin. Let's listen in.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, our negotiations have been held in a constructive atmosphere of mutual respect. We have very thorough negotiations that were quite useful. I would like to thank once again my American counterpart for the proposal to travel out here to Alaska. It only makes sense that we've met here because our countries, though separated by the oceans, are close neighbors. So when we've met, when I came out of the plane and I've said, good afternoon, dear neighbor, I think you can step over literally from yesterday into tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
And I hope that we'll succeed in that. In political sphere, I would like to thank President Trump for our joint work, for the well-wishing and trustworthy tone of our conversation. It's important that both sides are result-oriented, and we see that the President of the U.S. has a very clear idea of what he would like to achieve. He sincerely cares about prosperity of his nation. Still, he understands that Russia has its own national interests. I expect that today's agreements will be the starting point, not only for the solution of the Ukrainian issue, but also will help us bring back business-like and pragmatic relations between Russia and the U.S.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. That was very profound, and I will say that I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. You know, everybody wants to deal with us. We've become the hottest country anywhere in the world in a very short period of time, and we look forward to that. We look forward to dealing. We're going to try and get this over with. We really made some great progress today. I've always had a fantastic relationship with President Putin, with Vladimir. We had many tough meetings, good meetings. We were interfered with by the Russia hoax. That made it a little bit tougher to deal with, but he understood it. I think he's probably seen things like that during the course of his career. He's seen it all. But we had to put up with the Russia hoax. He knew it was a hoax, and I knew it was a hoax. But what was done was very criminal. But it made it harder for us to deal as a country in terms of the business and all of the things that we'd like to have dealt with. But we'll have a good chance when this is over. So just to put it very quickly, I'm going to start making a few phone calls and tell them what happened. But we had an extremely productive meeting, and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant. One is probably the most significant, but we have a very good chance of getting there. We didn't get there, but we have a very good chance of getting there. I would like to thank President Putin and his entire team. Again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening. Thank you very much, Vladimir. And thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It was even worse than I thought. It was just him glazing Putin.
Long way from whatever they
So we have just been watching this news conference between President Trump and Vladimir Putin. A lot about a cooperation with the U.S., possibly in trade, in space, and high tech.
What is happening?
A lot of platitudes were discussed, nothing concrete. What is your takeaway from what we just heard there?
Hey, Will, can you hear me?
Well, first of all, this is one of the very few times, Tom, I think we can say that the President of the United States had few words. How many times have we seen him where he took questions for hours and hours today, not taking a single question from reporters in the room, leaving unanswered a series of questions like, is there any ceasefire that was agreed to? It appears clear that there was not, at least from him saying there's no deal until there is a deal.
Bro, this is the most bitch-made thing I've ever seen. The situation is more dire. America is like, dude, Vladimir Putin literally came to the United States of America, took his out and said, suck it. And Trump gave him a blowjob, only to turn around and get nothing out of this equation at all beyond glazing Putin. What the f? I mean, so far, that's what it looks like to me.
At one point saying that thousands of lives will be saved if this deal is accomplished. But again, we have no idea what's going to happen. It sounds like he's going to go to NATO and go into I guess, the Ukrainian president and maybe talk about the terms of the deal and come back. But it's unclear. I do want to bring in now moderator of Meet the Press, Kristen Welker. Kristen, you've interviewed President Trump several times. You've covered these bilateral meetings just like Peter. You've been in the room. Look, if we start to read what's happened so far, a lot of the meeting was scrapped. It was shorter than we thought it was going to be. There's a news conference. No questions are taken. And now both leaders are on their way back to, Putin's back to Russia, President Trump back to D.C. What can we read from all this?
This is an extraordinary turn of events, Tom. Peter laid it out well. The fact that this feels rushed, the fact that we just heard from both leaders, and yet it's very cloudy in terms of what exactly was discussed, what was accomplished. They offered few, if any, specifics.
Putin come out and address.
Trump said he could go to Moscow,
first.
brother. What are you talking about?
U.S. soil here, and that left the media scrambling to get their headsets in. Usually, it is the the leader of the country, the host country of a summit, that speaks first and addresses the room in their language. But Putin started right off in Russian, and we all had to get our headsets on and listen to him rattle off this diatribe about the history of the U.S.-Russia relationship, making some allusions to something that we didn't. Some of the things that he has done in the past, setting up false flags and that kind of thing, saying that we hope that Ukraine doesn't do anything to sabotage the progress that we made today, knowing full well that Ukraine has agreed to a ceasefire unconditionally for the last several months, and it has been Russia that has not agreed to a ceasefire. That was President Trump's main objective today. And when we did hear from the president, he said, we didn't get there, but we think that we can. So a lot of questions remaining for the president, Trump, not just about what was discussed in that room and what might be happening now, but also how that all happened back there. It was just very unusual, atypical, and I think we're all awaiting, the readout, because the way that it felt in the room was not good. It did not seem like things went well, and it seemed like Putin came in and steamrolled, got right into what he wanted to say, and got his photo next to the president and then left. Of course, that is only the piece of the picture that we have right now, and certainly President Trump, who is the host and who is the president, would not want to, I think, enable something that would make him look weak. But we are eagerly awaiting to hear the background on that. And I will also note that we didn't see any sort of scowls on the faces of the likes of Steve Witkoff or Secretary Rubio or any of the other members of the U.S. delegation. And I think had it been concerning, we might have seen something there. But Just to paint a picture for you of in the room, how it felt, what we're wondering about, what we need to know to put the pieces together and fully understand what we all just witnessed.
Yeah,
Right.
I guess you have great sources, and so does a lot of people, and we'll try to put this thing together. The other thing is, it's really not between the U.S. and Russia, as you know, Jackie. It's between the U.S., it's between Ukraine and Russia. We're almost listening to say, is there a chance, is there a path to a ceasefire? And if not, the president's going to make evaluations from there, because he said
definitely more
serious
likely
sanctions
now
coming after and the arms are going to continue to. And so, therefore, if Vladimir Putin thinks he's steamrolled or thinks he's got a victory, if a victory is us with more sanctions and more arms, that doesn't look like a victory to me.
No, it certainly would not be. And the president has noted rightfully that the tariffs that he threatened on secondary sanctions on big purchasers of Russian oil like India and China that really drove Putin to the negotiating table, that would drive Russia's economy from bad to worse. And the picture really inside of Russia is very bad. They are having to give sign-up bonuses to join the military that are larger than the average national.
I'm just saying.
The average salary for across the country. They're running out of people. They're running out of cash. No one will buy their debt. There are any number of data points that you could reference here. And so certainly the president holds all the cards. But there were some things that Putin said that are always cause for concern. When he references things like root causes,
I know.
It's always a reference back to his ultimate goal of taking all of Ukraine. And so we'll see, though, of course. We got more out of Putin than we did from President Trump. And I expect that we'll get the full picture when he talks to Sean Hannity. Very, very grateful that he is going to be giving the full readout here soon.
Only this, Brian. Putin gets the joke, right? He is trying diligently to snuggle up to President Trump. He knows that President Trump holds all the cards that can bring his nation to near ruin. That, by the way, that read of World War II, I've heard from.
Dog, yeah, he glazed Trump
so many times is laughable.
and attacked Biden. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah, we didn't get there, is what he said, but we have productive meetings. I'm going to call NATO. I'm going to call the EU, European leaders. I'm going to call Zelensky. So he does have something to say, right? And soon we're going to get that, what happened and what didn't happen.
Oh, yeah, he has something
and then
to
we're going
say.
to have evaluation. It's just very different not to get that from the press conference.
Yeah, in a matter
Bro,
of
they're
hours,
having such a hard time spinning
this.
They can't even spin it because it was so devoid of nothing. And it's like one of the worst possible outcomes, because then all you've done at that point is just like show good favor to Vladimir Putin. And that's it. And you got nothing in return for it other than Vladimir Putin saying Biden was responsible, and also I would have never invaded Ukraine if Trump was still president. That's it. That's what Trump got in exchange for bringing Vladimir Putin to America under the auspices of like a ceasefire negotiation that literally, by his own admission, did not come to a reasonable conclusion at all.
There should be another meeting. I was kind of interested to get your take when President Putin recommended a venue. Watch.
Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening. Thank you very much, Vladimir. And thank you all. Thank you.
I think that caught him by surprise. Your thoughts?
Yeah, probably so. I'm sure President Putin would like to show up with the remaining fighters that he can still fly, and the Russian bombers, just as the Americans flew over the meeting today. Putin would probably like to return that favor and have a home and away game. I think President Trump will be pretty smart about where the venue for the next meeting, and I think it'll be important that President Zelensky be at that meeting as well. I'd be very surprised if President Zelensky, Trump, and Putin all met in Moscow. That would surprise me quite a bit. Who knows?
And a lot of people are going to talk about this. Jackie Heinrich points out, in tradition would have it, usually the home team gets to speak first. Vladimir Putin spoke first.
Yeah,
but with the president's unorthodox way of approaching everything about the presidency, I would look into that.
Zelensky. They bring Zelensky over, and then they kill him. Vladimir Putin gives Donald Trump the weapon to kill
President Trump, correct?
Zelensky with. And he's like, come on, do it.
Diplomatic niceties are not something that's going to offend him. I think also he likely wanted the last word. I know when I was in meetings like this and there was a readout, I always wanted to be the last one to clean up anything the other person may have said that didn't ring true to me. I imagine President Trump wanted to keep that prerogative so that if President Putin said something that he found either incorrect or needed to be fixed, he'd get that last word. He certainly got that today.
Mr. Secretary, check your text messages in your email. Let us know when you get some detail, and we'll have you just bump right in. Thanks so much for being our expert.
Oh, yeah, because you wanted to get the last word.
Meanwhile, 22 minutes after the hour, let's bring in Fox News contributor Kellyanne Conway, Jason Chaffetz, as well as Fox and Friends Weekend co-host Charlie Hurd. Kellyanne, I'll talk to you. Your sense about the fact that we did really not get any details from that press conference. Why?
Look, I think anybody who's confused about how this went down is still wondering what happened at the end of that final Sopranos episode. This is exactly what President Trump said was going to happen. He said it's not his deal to make. Putin is killing innocent people in a sovereign nation. He invaded that nation, and the country that is being attacked so viciously needs to be at the table to make the final deal. The second thing the president promised and delivered upon, Brian, is that this meeting would set up the framework for the next meeting. And it is not always the case where one meeting leads to another. We've all seen President Trump be one and done. I think in addition to the art of the deal is the art of the details. And I know President Trump is going to get back on Air Force One tonight. He's not going to go to sleep at all the entire ride. We already know that. And he's going to expect everyone around him.
He's going to be kicking his feet up, thinking about how Vladimir Putin his ass.
And what the details should be like. And I think he's going to talk to Zelensky again. He's going to talk to the other European leaders again. Look, everything came up Trump in the U.S. today. This was his meeting on U.S. soil with U.S. bombers ahead. Look at the step and repeat behind them. It says pursuing peace. Do you think Vladimir Putin wanted to stand in front of a banner on U.S. soil a foot shorter than the U.S. president in front of words that say pursuing peace? That's the goal here. But that's President Trump's
goal.
Are
you serious?
And the last thing I'll say is Putin, I disagree completely with who said he's got cards to play. He got the first word,
Bro, they're
the
libs
first
now.
statement. I think today
They're
the most
fucking
important
libs. They're libbed
word
up.
to get
They're
was
libbed
the
up the
last word.
wazoo. This
and
is
President
crazy.
Trump was crisp and concise. You know why?
Amazing. Dude, they're trying desperately to spin this around into like a positive, and there's so nothing. There's so much of absolutely nothing, nada, zero, that they're just like, yeah, Trump looked hot on stage. Of Vladimir Putin, I bet he felt bad after he nutted in Trump, you know?
This summit, which President Putin described as an agreement and one that he didn't want to see European
Trump
leaders
actually
interfere
didn't want
with.
Vladimir
What
Putin to
comes
call
out
him
of
an
that
Uber
call
after
will set up
he
the
nutted
next stages
inside
this
of him.
conflict and the discussions
You know,
to end
that's
it.
like normal.
All right,
That's
Garrett
actually a
Akers,
power
thank
play.
you. That concludes this NBC News special report. We'll have much more coverage.
That's a real power play from Trump. Yeah, he wanted the nut. Oh my God, this panel is like the most freakish panel of all time. John Bolton, Rahm Emanuel, what the
really got what he wanted from Trump. And if Trump had been irate, he would have called things off. Putin has gotten to him. I think that's very clear.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just thinking back to the beginning of this, Putin walking off the plane to a round of applause from the President of the United States, Trump was a very eager participant in resetting this relationship, the personal relationship between the two of them.
I'm gonna keep it $150. Like the whole second meeting will take place in Moscow. Second meeting will take place in Russia is a crazy statement. And then of course, like Trump is on the spot there, but it's wild that his response is, "Oh, they would get mad at me, Vladdy Poo. They would get mad at me if I were to do it, Vladdy Poo." The second meeting is supposed to have Zelensky. You understand? It ain't happening in Moscow if Zelensky is showing up.
You know, we're going to start new talks on the future of nuclear weapons. That would have been something, a headline. He didn't even get that.
Yeah. Well, it's also what he said, there's not a deal until there's a whole deal. Back in Cold War days when there were Soviet-U.S. talks, they would refer to bilateral issues between the U.S. and the Soviet Union and regional issues, conflicts in Africa, conflicts in Asia. I think Putin may have gotten back to that, and Ukraine's a regional conflict, but he was talking mostly about bilateral issues. And if so, I think that's a big win for him.
And there is a little hint of that.
I saw some video with the Russian ambassador who was interviewed quickly by a Russian reporter. And they were talking, it was very hard to hear him, but he said basically some issue on visa issues, which would be part of the relationship. It's so minor, but, you know, getting them back into the embassies, restoring the relationship, visas, et cetera.
Stuff that for 3 years has been off the table. Stuff that for 3 years has been,
reestablishing the relationship has nothing to do with Ukraine.
Yeah, the U.S., I mean, the economic piece of this, all the potential that was there that was supposed to be held kind of back, that may be where the progress is because of the U.S.-Russian relationship. And Ukraine is basically kind of still in that treading water with no progress, which means that's not good for Ukraine because he slipped the noose on the sanctions number 4 time, and he gets to continue his war unencumbered.
This is nutty, dude. This is some real ass nutty ass shit right here. Yeah, Trump told Brett Baer before the meeting, I won't be happy if I walk away without some form of ceasefire.
Of this meeting,
well, now we know that was an abject failure.
With a ceasefire?
Bro went from no ceasefire means I'm going to be upset to no ceasefire and the second meeting will be in Moscow, which means, again, whatever the fuck Russia wants, I guess. Yeah, Brett Baer said that a Putin interview was potentially in the works, but it's not happening after the rescheduled press conference, probably because like Putin already nutted too much inside of Trump. So he's like, I can't nut anymore. I'm out. It's so far looks like a spectacular failure. One that is actually unique because it's so it's like you're used to Trump dominating global leaders, right? You're used to him bitching them out, having them come to the White House, sitting there. Is he like chirps on endlessly about, I don't know, transgender athletes or something, right? This was Putin doing that to him. And you just saw it. Like, and for a guy who cares so much about the aesthetics of domination, compare Donald Trump's meetings with like Keir Starmer, Macron, Merz, and any number of different world leaders versus the meeting that he just had and the press conference that he just gave with Vladimir Putin. He was the one in the bitch seat. And this is something that he cares about. He cares about not looking like he's being dominated. It's maybe the only thing he cares about. I feel like it's pretty crazy that he was like even smiling through the process when it's like very obvious that the deal didn't go anywhere. He started off with a smile and everything.
President Trump says we're not quite there yet, which is the bottom line.
Right, and that whole area has not been conquered by Russia, so why would Ukraine give up the most valuable piece of land that they've worked so hard to hold on to since they've been attacked since 2014? Ed, thank you so much. We'll look forward to more details in your analysis. Joining us right now, former Ambassador at Large Nathan Sales, Fox News contributor, Washington Post columnist Mark Thiessen, and Christian Whiten. He's a former State Department senior advisor. Mark, we don't know a lot, Mark Thiessen, about what took place, but reading between the lines, what have you concluded?
Well, if they had not had a press conference, then that would have been a sign that the talks had failed, because Trump said if they don't go well, I'm just going to walk away and that's it. If they had taken questions, it would have meant that they were in agreement. And they didn't take any questions, so they seem to have split the difference. Appeared together, so the talks are alive. But even within what they said in the prepared statements, they were disagreeing, because Putin said, we've got a deal and Ukraine better not throw a wrench in it. And Donald Trump said there was no deal, that there were some things that were agreed on, some big things that weren't agreed on, but might get agreed on. So, you know, even there, without even taking questions, there was some daylight between what the two of them were saying. So we don't know the answer.
Let's be clear. The root cause of this war is Vladimir Putin. He could end it today if he wanted to, and he doesn't want to because he thinks he can win it on the ground. What his goal is to take back all of Ukraine, to neuter it as a sovereign and independent state. And why does that matter? Because if you don't have Ukraine, you don't have a Russian empire. And that's Putin's endgame. He wants to reconstitute the Soviet or Tsarist empire, the collapse of which he has said was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. He still thinks that. Okay. He's going to keep fighting, I'm afraid.
Okay. So So, Christian, there's no doubt about it. He wants.
No, he said that about the USSR's dissolution and the collapse of the USSR, and he was right about that. No, that doesn't even matter, though, because he's not trying to recreate the USSR. He wants the Russian Empire.
Hey, by the way, we're neighbors. We're 2.5
If
miles
he has any capability of doing so, is, of course, an entirely different question.
Ukraine, don't get in our way.
But
so clearly he's posturing there, right?
Having said that,
No,
having said
that's
that,
actually a good objective to have, because the Europeans are a problem here. They are the ones who are encouraging Zelensky.
these guys are
to continue with the myth.
these
that
guys
he's
are
going to
talking
get
about
all of
this
Ukrainian territory back, including Crimea, which
while trying to also simultaneously glaze Trump, and they're failing to do so because, like, the American State Department position broadly, or American foreign policy position broadly, is being antagonistic to Russia. But Trump, as an individual, is antagonistic to Ukraine.
The reality is there's no compelling United States interest at stake here. There's a continent called Europe with as many people.
So on the one hand,
an economy as large as
on the one hand, they're trying to fucking present this as like a good thing that took place.
When you see the day start in Europe coming up,
But on the other hand, they're just like they're still left with commentary that says, like, you know, Trump's best friend Vladimir Putin, that he obviously clearly loves being around, is actually bad.
Yeah, I disagree with you. I think it is in our interest to back up Ukraine. In fact, now suddenly Republicans, and thanks, I'm going to bring up Mark again, but now Republicans, according to the latest poll, are up 9 points in support of Ukraine, and 74% of Republicans now say Ukraine should get more arms.
I told you, see, Brian is a big like continue war with Russia guy, and I think there are some people like the guy who just kicked off the conversation there abruptly, as you noticed. There are some people who are unironically either genuinely invested in like ending this conflict.
I didn't interrupt you, Christian. I didn't interrupt you, Christian. Stop talking. There are people who are literally robbing grocery stores for butter so they can sell it on the black market. The only thing propping up the Russian economy is oil and gas sale. And if Donald Trump crushes oil and gas sale, the Russian economy is going to be in big, big trouble. So there's nobody pushing for a victory to the end and driving Russia out of all the territory. Everybody wants peace. Everybody wants to end this war in a stable way. And so does Donald Trump. And I don't think Donald Trump agrees with the word that Christian said there either.
All right. Thanks, guys. We can't wait to get more details about what took place behind closed doors, because both leaders have left. We just have their remarks, and we'll analyze that.
Your old shower for too long. It's outdated, unsafe.
That's really interesting. There's like actually people. There's actually people on the Republican side that are like, I guess, pro-Russia. Or like maybe they're genuine isolationists. I don't know. What I am seeing here, however, is that the meeting was a failure. And it was such a failure that even Fox News is having a hard time.
Yeah, I think you have it right, Jake. Look, the
Describing it in positive
of the
terms.
entire summit was somewhat cringeworthy. The fact that Putin was being welcomed on American soil, the fact that Trump gave him literally a red carpet treatment, the kind he has rarely given to any, Democratic ally of the United States. You can tell that Trump thinks Putin is an equal, is this big shot on the world stage, and he's been treated by the rest of the West as a kind of pariah. I mean, he can't go to Europe because he'd be arrested.
Yeah, real quick, 30-second answer. Remember, he had another round.
I'm going to keep it a $1.50. I do think that we are officially in a multipolar world right now. That's what it feels like to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But it kind of feels like we are no longer. We are now officially in a multipolar world. I don't think it's a bad thing unless America recognizes it. America is not recognizing it. That's the bad part about it. Because, like, as I said already, if America's solution here is to bring China to the table and say, like, China is a superpower, it's a global power, it's the senior partner in this coalition behind Russia, we have to all get together and draw out a reasonable conclusion in this, then that is the only effective way to stop further bloodshed from taking place. If America behaves as though it's still the hegemonic superpower, the only singular power that matters around the world, and continues like increasing the sanctions and tries to attack all of the other allies that are also non-aligned with America entirely. So they are also playing both sides. Like they're playing Russia as well. They're working with Russia as well, like India being a great example. Then it's going to isolate itself further. America is going to isolate itself further. And in that isolation, as I said before, without soft power, 800 military bases go from joint security partnerships to 800 different military invasions. America is not capable of that upkeep. And I don't even know. I don't even know if they were, if maybe Brandon wasn't capable of fixing this either. I actually don't know what Trump could even do at this point, outside of what I've mentioned, like bringing China to the table and rerouting the conversation through China. Because without that, he has no leverage. The only leverage that America has in this situation is like what? Dissolve NATO? That's ridiculous. The Ukraine war and Israel's genocide in Gaza show we're already in a multipolar world because the U.S. can't unilaterally control outcomes. Russia, China, regional powers in the global south act on their own terms, form parallel alliances, and block Western goals. Multiple centers of power now shape global events, not a single hegemon. I mean, Israel is the one area where he has unilateral control, so it's fucking crazy that they won't even enforce that. And I think part of the reason why they won't enforce the unilateral control they have over Israel is because they too recognize that their time is running out, so they want to make sure that Israel has maximum power and maximum leverage in the region before they are forced to shut the money faucet. They will erode every last ounce of global influence they have on this Israel, while simultaneously hoping that the Gulf, the GCC states that are a part of OPEC continue to abide by American interests to a certain degree. I don't know. It kind of feels like America is more of a... I haven't felt this way ever, but it does feel like America is more of a paper tiger today than ever before. And I guess in that respect, Vladimir Putin did succeed. Because this was, this was a decent blow, I think. Just judging by the optics of the situation, looking at the way Donald Trump deals with, again, Canada, and maybe even some instances Mexico, European allies, versus the way he deals with Vladimir Putin, there's a big difference there. So much more reverence, so much more respect for Vladimir Putin, if we're an adversary, than all of the allies. It feels like he is trying to reinstate his power on the global stage by just like consistently bullying the allies, knowing that they'll take it. While simultaneously, when it actually comes down to being a superpower, a hegemonic superpower, when it comes to dealing with Russia, he actually truly shows the limits of American power. Would you say that Trump isn't holding all the cards? Yeah, it kind of feels like Trump's not holding any of the cards. And part of that is not even his fault entirely. But part of that is also because he's like completely eroded whatever goodwill he might have had with other allies. Air raid sirens in Kharkiv, Richard Engel reports, even as Putin is still on the ground in Alaska. Well, feels like it's not, it feels like it didn't work really, Doesn't seem like the meeting was productive beyond, like it does genuinely feel like Trump brought Putin to the United States of America, to Alaska, just to have him say, oh, this war would have never started if Trump was still president. That's it. Like, that's what he got. That was the concession he got from Putin, which is completely meaningless.